Hello everyone, I'm Michael, and I'm officially the class tough guy, but not out of my own free will. You want to know the details? Then make yourself comfortable. When I was 5 years old, my dad left family. I hardly remember that time, but I remember that my mom cried a lot and sat by the window, as if she was waiting for my father to return. Time passed and my mother pulled herself together. We moved to another place, and my mom found a new job and changed a lot. Had a new hairstyle, changed what she wore, and she devoted all her time to raising me, saying that I was the most important thing in her life. I grew up and began to understand that my mom was lonely, and someday I'd have to graduate from school, go to college, and she would be left all alone. No matter how hard it was for me to think about this stuff, I told my mom that it was time to move on. Since I wasn't going to be around for long, Mom got embarrassed and said that she didn't even think about a new relationship, and I didn't want me to bring it up again. I said nothing and decided not to ask anymore. Time passed. I got to 11th grade and completely immersed myself in academics. As a kid, I was always smaller than everybody else, and I got picked on for this. At first, they were just jokes, but then later I was mocked. I couldn't fight back, I was too small. I knew I couldn't stand up for myself. In my dreams, I was a super cool dude who keeps the whole school in fear. But in reality, I just sit like a coward. One Saturday morning, my mom sat me down next to me and she poured me some juice and said that we need to talk. I started listening with interest. Mom said that although she promised not to start a relationship with anyone, she still met a very good person. I was very surprised to hear it. It's one thing when you talk about it, and it's another thing when it's actually happening. Mom, with a smile on her face, told me that his name was Stefan, and he was very kind, sensitive, and caring. I mentally drew the guy in my head. When will I see this dude? I think he'll be a mix of Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp, judging by the description Mom gave me. Mom said that he'll come tomorrow for lunch and we will finally meet. I spent the rest of the day thinking about it and was even a little worried. It's not every day that you meet your mom's boyfriend. A new day arrived and the great smells of pastries and various dishes came from the kitchen. I went downstairs to help out. My mom asked to lay everything as the guest was almost here. The doorbell rang. My mother straightened her hair and ran to open it. A moment later, a man appeared in front of me, who, well, I would have never imagined would date my mom. He was tall with a stern face, a muscular figure, and a lot of tattoos, especially on his arms, neck, and some on his face. He looked like a criminal, and my mom's description of kind and fluffy was clearly not about him. The man nodded to me in greeting and immediately walked to the table. Then I watched him start eating all the dishes from the table. It seemed like he had not eaten for the last few months. Mom told him something about me and tried to start a conversation, but most of our lunch passed in silence. So, Stefan, tell us what you do. Finally, I asked. I'm not working currently, looking at the moment. And you go to school, right? Anybody pick on you? Stefan asked me. I didn't have time to answer. My mom said everything for me. She began to say that I grew up without a father and that I was too soft in character. I was kind and that I often got picked on. I got so embarrassed from this. Stefan looked at my mom and said that he'll make everyone at school respect me and fear me. The next day I went to school. As usual, I sat down on the farthest desk and took out my books. Half the class were already seated, but for some reason the boys weren't there. When the guys appeared at the door, they looked at me very strangely, and one had come up to me and held out his hand. Despite the many years of being in the same class, no one's ever done that. Had a weird feeling they were scared of something. The lesson began, and I constantly saw people glancing at me. What's going on? I wrote a note to my seated neighbor. What happened? Why is everyone looking at me so weird? The neighbor immediately wrote the answer. It's your stepfather. Why didn't you tell us about him? Confused. What stepfather? Who? You mean Stefan? What did he tell the guys that made them behave so well? Damn, I remembered yesterday's conversation and realized that Stefan came to my school. And at recess, I went up to the guys to know what actually was going on. Our class tough guy, Carl, looked at me in shock and took me aside. Listen, I understand we've never been good friends and I've never been very nice to you, but don't tell your stepdad about our past. If you want, you can take my place as the class tough guy, as our class rep in charge of the order of our class. You'll have our support. Please don't tell your stepdad. I'm afraid of Stefan. After all, just got out of jail. You never know. What? What kind of jail? Yesterday's words, his tattoos on his body, scars. Is it really true? I immediately called my mother, demanding to explain everything. Really, all this time to pick someone, and she ends up choosing a former prisoner. He's gotta be kidding. Mom didn't pick up the phone, but I was really scared. Maybe she's next to him. Maybe he told her his secret. And maybe my mom dumped him and he got angry. God, I've got to get home as soon as possible. I ran home like a bullet without waiting for the bus. I ran and I ran, sweat streaming down my face and back, and I ran faster and faster. I dialed my mom's number, but she didn't answer. It was so unlike her. My mom was always in touch. Already running up to the yard, I saw that the front door was wide open, and my mother's scarf was lying on the ground in blood. Oh no! Mom! Mom! Then my mom appeared on the doorstep with her hand tied. Everything all right, son? And Stefan came out with her. What have you done? I rushed to him with my fists. Mom stood between us and began to calm me down. I shouted that Stefan was a former prisoner and that I would not allow him to come close to our family. To which Stefan sat me down on a chair and explained everything. Turns out he's an actor who just pretended to be an ex-convict to scare my classmates, and tattoos are just his style. What about your hand, Mom? I asked. Mom laughed and said that they wanted to have a barbecue, but Mom accidentally cut herself while cutting meat, and so she wrapped a scarf around her hand so it doesn't get infected. Stefan patted me on the shoulder. Michael, don't worry. I value your mother very much, and I see that you're a good guy. Give me a chance to prove it to you. I nodded and we shook hands. And then we went to grill some barbecue and ended up laughing about today's incident. But I decided not to tell my classmates about the truth because being the class tough guy wasn't too bad. If you liked the video, then please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to our channel. Hello everyone, my name is David. I have a story to tell you, but I'll say this right away. The story is quite scary, but don't take everything to heart. This can hardly happen in everyday life. But not in my family. Everything is different with me. Well, I won't keep you waiting. Let me get down to business right away. There are 4 of us in the family. Dad, Mom, my older sister, Veronica, and me. Veronica left a few years ago for another state because she got married. She comes to visit extremely rarely. And a couple of months ago, she surprised us with great news. She was soon going to be a mother. My mom was very happy about the news because she dreamed of becoming a grandmother. By the way, yes, our parents are quite young. They're a little over 50, but they look even younger. And all this, according to my mom, is thanks to proper nutrition and sports. You will never find fried food or a lot of flavor or alcohol in our house. My parents are obsessed with healthy food and drinking water. Technically, my sister and I have also been used to this form of childhood, but sometimes I still allow myself fast food. Yes, I do like junk food. Well, what am I even talking about? Oh yes, and so, our mother was an active person. She was everywhere at once and liked to participate in public affairs, loaded herself with worries of other people, and still managed to do her chores. I could never imagine her being alone and staying in one place. As time went on, I got older and eventually had to go to college. We all understood that moving to a different place was no joke, especially since my college was far away. Mom did not want to let me go. She always said that if she was left alone, the house would feel empty and she would be sad, but I reassured her that she was not alone, but with Dad. And she also always had something to do, so I wasn't worried about that. My father was in favor of me going away because at the ending of the day, they birthed me so that I could live my life. I quickly packed my things, kissed my parents, and got into the car. The road almost took a whole day. As soon as I arrived to another state with my friends, I was full of excitement. I could not wait to get a taste of my new adult life. Even though I was still anxious, I was extra happy with the fact that there were no parents nearby, which meant that I was finally leaving the family nest for good. Almost all other students were in the same position, and this brought us closer. I was lucky to have my childhood friend with me. His name was Ted. We were going to do the same major and even began to live together in dorms. To be honest, everything turned out to be more difficult than we had imagined. Turns out that studying in college is not all like high school. The academic pressure is bigger, and if you do not want to be expelled or have your scholarship be taken away, you have to study hard. Little by little, we tried to devote more time to study. We made this a priority. When I called home, I would hear my mom cry, and I understood that she was bored, and I also missed her. But still, I believe that we all should get used to living like this. My father was at work almost all the time, and 6 months later, my mom's company was closed, and she decided to be an at-home mom. Because of her age, few places dared to hire her, and she decided that it was time for a rest and finally take up gardening, which she had long wanted to do. My sister and I did not call each other. I did not want to meddle in her affairs, and she wasn't particularly interested in me. I knew that she now had her own family. So a whole year passed. Because of the frantic schedule, I've never went home. Missed all the holidays, Christmas, and even my mom's and dad's birthdays. At first, I called regularly, messaged, and sometimes even video called. But then my calls became less frequent because I decided to take a part-time job at a local cafe. Ted and I decided to rent a small apartment not far from the school and split the rent. Our dorms were fine, but your own apartment, although rented, was still better. We both got jobs, worked in a cafe, and he washed cars. And it so happened that we spent mornings until lunchtime at school, and then were at work from the evening and late at night. I didn't get enough sleep. I was slacking a bit at school, but still submitted everything and passed all the exams. Sometimes I wanted to give up everything, but I did not forget that comfort requires investment. So I always pulled myself together and went to work. Almost a year passed in this way. I had lost count of how many times my mom called me, and I had to miss her calls. It was impossible to use the phone either at school or work, so I was inaccessible to almost anyone. Not only to my mother. When the break began again, I devoted myself completely to work and doubled my paycheck. And then I got a girlfriend, and I also had to spend time with her. In short, I had not seen my parents for almost 2 years. My sister gave birth a while ago, and I found out about it accidentally. In all this time, we didn't even call once. She also did not come to visit the parents. One day, while we were at the movies with Jill, my girlfriend, I saw that my dad was calling me. I made a grumpy face and damn it, at the wrong time again. I didn't pick up the phone, and then I got a message. Son, call me back urgently. Your mother is... The message stopped abruptly, and at that moment, I heard my heart pounding in my temples. I ran out of the hall and began to call Dad. He picked up and was silent for a long time. And then he said that Mom was gone. But then I don't remember what happened. I probably fainted right there and there. Jill ran out to me and called an ambulance, but I quickly came to my senses. That evening I packed my things and went home. I do not remember how long the road lasted. During the 2 years of my absence, many things had changed. I felt a lump in my throat. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Every now and then, I thought of my mother, about who she was, and hated myself for not even calling or answering her. I rushed to my house. My knees trembled at the sight of the familiar house. I opened the door and entered. My sister was sitting there with her daughter and husband. She was crying. My father was also sitting there. I went up to him and silently hugged him. And at that moment, I gave in to my emotions and burst into tears, so hard that I could not breathe. My sister had changed. We haven't seen each other in 7 years. It was such a long time. She kept saying that it was all her fault, that she did not call, didn't visit, and I realized that I did the exact same things. My father said that Mom was in the morgue. She will be brought in a few hours. There were flowers in the house, white roses, my mom's favorite. And I still could not believe that this was happening. An hour later, a car arrived with a coffin. My mom was in it. As soon as the coffin was brought into the house, I cried even more. My mother was still just as beautiful. It felt like she was asleep. I couldn't believe it. The coffin was in the middle of the living room. My sister and I went up to my mom together and again began to cry, asking for forgiveness. I said that if we were given another chance, we would never behave like that because one can only have 2 parents in a lifetime. You never know when the end will come. Maybe that's why we don't value what we have, often forgetting about those who love us more than anything. And that's why I brought you here. You don't visit any other way, my mom said, opening her eyes. My sister and I screamed in surprise. Veronica fainted. I was standing still. Mom? I said. Mom rose from the coffin in her black dress. She dusted herself off, the flowers from my hands and said, "Thank you. At least you haven't forgotten which ones I love," she said, and just stood there alive and well. When my sister was brought to her senses, my mom looked at her and said that we would not have come otherwise and that she now finally saw her granddaughter. We were a bit traumatized after that, but my mom's actions were fair. We have learned the lesson once and for all, and now we find time not only for calls, but we also visit several times a year. If you like the story, then give it a thumbs up and write us some comments. And don't forget to subscribe.